All right. I will call this meeting to order. This is the Prairie Hill Community Consolidated School District number 133 Board of Education monthly board meeting. Those in attendance?
Mrs. Allenbecker? Here. Mr. Hendricks?
Here.
Mrs. Anderson? Here. Mr. Keller?
Here.
Mrs. Dixon? Here. Mrs. Zabel? Mr. Crouch?
Here.
Okay. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. For our reception and communication audience visitors, we have Misty Wells on, I'm assuming that is committee meeting minutes?
Correct. Thank you
Okay.
for reading my shorthand.
Go ahead.
I've emailed each member of the board and kind of brought to your attention that the committee meetings so that's the policy committee, the education transportation, the finance and building committee meetings. There doesn't seem to be any form of meeting minutes that have been posted to the public. For the Illinois Open Meeting Act, I'm sure you are all aware that those are to be provided to the public as a part of that law. It is my understanding that as board members, since 2012, the OMA has made it mandatory for you to receive some form of training on like their policies and guidelines within 90 days of taking your oath. And I would just like a response at some point from the board as to why within the last 3 years there hasn't been a single meeting minute posted for public review. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Pride of Prairie Hill, members of the Fall Festival.
This is Duncan Elstrom. I saw you. Want to talk a little bit about it?
Sorry.
Do you want to recap it?
Yeah. Give us a recap of the Fall Festival.
Yeah, well, we had a great turnout this year. A lot of planning went into it. We had a lot of great support from parents and these awesome kids up here. So yeah, we had a lot going on. A couple new things added to the mix this year. I don't know, Ms. Duncan, you want to go over all the activities? I can't think.
So we have the whole purpose of the Fall Festival is to raise money so that we can continue to have Permaculture Club and Pet Patrol and offer the kids the unique opportunity to care for animals here at school. So our Fall Festival is designed to showcase what the kids have been working on and have some fun and help them raise money so that they can keep their program going. This year we had our petting zoo, we had horseback rides, we had various animals join us. We had a haunted house for the first time. For that honor goes to Mrs. Bucha, who worked really hard, who took our idea and went running with it and did amazing. And all of the kids who participated in the haunted house, because it was student run, we definitely were able to raise a lot more this year now that we catered more to our middle school, because we love having everybody in the community and everybody at both schools, but in prior years it had definitely been geared more towards the younger crowd. So this year with the haunted house and the horses and we had hay wagon rides and games. What else, guys? Bounce house. What else do we do? We had a bake sale. What'd you say? We had the shakes, which have been a big draw for our kiddos. But we were able to cater more food.
Is that what I'm smelling?
Yeah. So we were able to.
I thought it might have been Clint.
Yeah. We were able to cater more to our students as well as Prairie Hill students, which is what we really wanted to do this year, was to just unify everything and really bring in, and offer something for everybody. But yeah, but the haunted house, definitely that might have been our idea, but Mrs. Bucha took off with that and running. And then if it's okay, I'd just like to kind of give off who helped us out.
Please.
That's okay?
Yeah.
So these guys here, who you may recognize, this is Bryce and Camden Harris and their mom Amanda. They have helped us out for for a few years now, and they also do a lot for us outside of school time as well. They also helped us yesterday. I was able to set up a table for trunk or treat, but I could not stay, and Mrs. Keller had a million other tables, and Mr. Elstrom were unable to be here, but we wanted to support PSA and have a table. So Bryce, Camden, and Amanda were willing and able to run that table for us, so thank you guys a lot for that. And they are integral throughout the year, including the summers and vacations, not just during the school hours. They help out in the garden a lot too in the summer, so. And then the Keller kids, Eli, Easton, Emma, and Elena, and thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Keller as well for helping us out. Mrs. Keller is part of Permaculture Club with us and helps us out insanely. And Mr. Keller over there driving the truck for the hay rides every year, thank you. And then the kids who weren't here, we have Lola Monson, Lorelei Gilbertson, Layla Unrath, Mason Wade, Ellie DeHaze, Lear Cass Stevens, Cree Nichols, Lily Manring, Ella Epperson, Elena Trent, Logan Martin, and Alyssa Thompson. So Permaculture and Pet Patrol would like to give a special shout out to the Harris family, the Keller family, and the Thompson family who provided us with grilled pizzas, personal pizzas, for the first time this year as well, which was nice to utilize our
Yeah,
garden.
I wanna say on that, yeah, and it was almost everything made from the garden, fresh pizzas. Now, Mr. CZIZEK, Alyssa will be in high school next year, so I don't know if they will be manning the grill, and I know you've got some experience, so got your apron ready for it next year, Mr. CZIZEK.
I got you.
It's a grill.
But, and we appreciate everybody. I see familiar faces who came to support us.
I was just gonna say,
Appreciate you
just to
guys.
echo from the customer side of it, that's why I nominated you all, because I came with my kids pre-K through fifth grade, and there was something for everybody. The pre-K was engaged, and the fifth grader was engaged, the horse rides were a big hit. And it was also so well run too, the kids in charge of stations were so friendly, and come on over and play, and let me explain how to do it, and I think one of you did the potato sack race with my kids too, and encouraged them as they were trying to figure out how to do that. So very well run by student volunteers and adult volunteers.
Great.
The haunted house was such a hit that the kids wanted it at lunch, so I think, what did we do, 2 days?
Yeah.
2 days.
After, and they used a good chunk of their recess time to pay, I think we charged $1 to go through, or something, $2 like that, and it was, in 2 days, it made a good chunk of money at lunch, so kids loved it. There's a lot of screaming, but good entertainment.
Well, we have some recognition certificates for you. Bryce Harris, come up here, bud. Thank you. Camden Harris. Thank you. All right. Elena Keller. All right, Easton Keller. Eli Keller. Kellers are taking over the world. Emma Keller. And Allison Keller. Thanks, Allison. We'll lead that family, right?
In recognition to Mrs. Duncan and Mr. Elstrom as well.
Yes, they are our staff pride of Prairie Hill
Yes,
for this month, too,
absolutely.
for running it all.
Thank you very much. welcome to stick around, or you can leave if you want. I don't know how exciting it'll be, but you're welcome to stay. Moving on though, for us, consent agenda.
If there was something I saw for changing the meeting minutes ever so slightly, how do we handle that?
Change as far as location and,
So it was just removing the extra reasons for going into closed session beyond the ones that we actually stated in the motion. That was, they were highlighted, just getting rid of the extra.
just deleting the rest of them.
Yep.
Just make a motion with a friendly amendment. That's how we do it.
I'll entertain a motion then. Sounds like you've got it, Tina.
I'll make a motion with the friendly amendment. So you call it a motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Mrs. Wambacher?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
I did want to abstain from the bills,
You
so
can.
just abstain. Okay.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Crutch?
Yes. Administrator reports. Mr. Carter, Prairie Hill update.
All right. It's been a while since we've met. I was going through and looking at what the schedule has been since mid-September. Jogathon happened. That was about a month ago. We had a great day. It was really warm that day. Big thank you to PSA and Mrs. Sockness for their hard work for making that happen. We had a lot of fun. I'm not sure on the total yet, but we're anxious to see how they did. I think they did well. Parking lot update. Thank you for the board with the painting and the new procedures. It's working really well over the last month. We did increase the staff parking by 14 spots. And there's a noticeable increase in parents and students using the drop-off and pickup line. There's been over 300 views on that Screencastify that I sent out about a month ago. There are still parking spots available even at certain times for both drop-off and pickup. And fewer people are walking through the parking lot, and limited people are parking in the grass now, so I've been very pleased with how it's been going. Staffing update, we are now fully staffed with paras. Thank you for our substitutes, though, who've been picking up the jobs for their absences. Please wash hands, everybody. Something's going around. Big thank you to Mr. Bressler for coordinating the Aaron's Law presentations, those completed this week. Mr. Lieutenant Wagner from the Sheriff's Department, I communicated with him a couple of weeks ago. We have tentatively set Thursday, November 21st at 9 a.m. to do a lockdown drill. I'll communicate that with parents in the next week or two, kind of like what they did last year with the email, and then also put it in my November periodical. Earlier in October, we recognized our teamwork nominees. American Bell is working on finishing our t-shirts. It's going to say Wolverine Way on them. We have a limited number right now, but we're hoping to have them by the end of the week. So we'll recognize our fairness winners on this coming Monday, and we'll be working on respect for November and December. As we've been moving to incorporate more of the science of reading or the explicit phonics instruction, our kinder, first, and second grade teachers are very eager to get more decodable materials. Several teachers in all 3 grades are volunteering next month, November, at concessions to help with that cause. And some have even filled out Golden Apple grants, and their passion for our students is awesome. Conferences in the upcoming book fair, we switched over to Pick a Time. It's working, it's great. We still have spots available. I think the last time we checked, we have over 80% of our families have signed up. Just a quick reminder that if on Mondays, our first round of conferences, it will lock parents out. But if you need to make any changes for Monday, call the office. We can do that manually. But it should still work fine for the 14th. Even though our trimester does end next Friday, teachers will be previewing information for their families that they will see on the report card for this Monday's first round. The book fair is going to open up on November 14th. That's the second round of conferences. Students and families will be able to purchase and preview that night. Students will then be able to view the book fair and fill out a wish list during library time the following week of the 18th. Purchasing will occur outside of library time. If parents can't come in after school from 3:30 to 4:30, it'll be open that following week. Mrs. Weber has been great assisting with Ms. Bertrand, our new librarian, with this process as well. And then last but certainly not least, the news broke today that we have several Golden Apple nominees at Prairie Hill. So I'd like to take a moment and recognize our nominees at Prairie Hill: Mrs. Baumann, Mrs. Davenport, Mrs. Esvander, Mrs. Francis, Mrs. Gissel, Mrs. Kettner, Mrs. Mathewson, Ms. Milligan, Mrs. Mortimer, Ms. Peterson, Mrs. Rogers, Mrs. Roth, Mrs. Sockness, Mrs. Werner, and Mrs. Wyatt. They'll have a reception Wednesday the 13th from 4:30 to 6 at Rockford University. I'm hoping to attend that with some of our nominees as well. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Mrs. Thompson, Willbrook updates.
All right, as Craig mentioned, there is a lot that has happened because it seems like it's been a while since we've met. So kind of looking back through all of the things, we did go through or run through our annual evacuation or ALICE drill on September, I want to say it was the 26th. The South Police Department did come and help assist with that and kind of give us feedback on what they thought went well and what we could do different, or things to consider in the state of an emergency or we were to actually have to evacuate or go out. The way that the drill is set up is I kind of make calls from the announcement over the loudspeaker, and then students with their teachers decide what they would do in those situations. So some teachers decided to actually evacuate and have kids go out of the building and practice that. Some chose to have kids stay in place, depending on the class and the makeup of the class, and talk about what they would do if they truly were to evacuate, where they would go, what door they would use, what they would look like. Our kind of escape plan is to go to the Del Santo property, so like this very far corner out back of the building here. If you basically walk through the fields, you can get to Chris Del Santo's property, and that's where we would, our kind of reunification spot before we would call out and get families and bus company and everybody to reunify everybody with their families. So that went really well, and it's always good. We do a couple scenarios, which is always good because the kids in middle school especially can get a little silly when you're running any type of drill, so it's good to go through the first time and say, okay, if this was real, what should we have been, how should our behavior have been different, what other things should we take into consideration? Is sprinting and running over everybody the best way to get out of the building? Or the officer had this line where he was like, slow, he said slow is smooth and smooth is quick, and so that was something that we kind of reiterated to everybody, kind of proving the point of like, everybody's moving swiftly but slowly enough to take care of everybody, it goes smooth, and inevitably everybody gets out faster and is safer in the event that something would happen. So it's never really a lighthearted drill, and it's not exactly fun to run, but I think it's important and lots to consider, especially with us being back here in this field. There's a lot of places to go, but there's also not a lot of places to exit. So there's just things that we constantly think about and get the police department's input from. Also, we had a shift because DJ Johnson was one of the officers who visited here regularly. He'd walk through the building probably weekly, I would say. He retired last January, so we had Officer Truman come into our faculty meeting just a couple weeks ago, and he introduced himself, and then one of the other police officers who would be here as well, just to kind of check on our building and have that as well. So that's something that we do regularly. They do stop by and we just walk through, kind of say hi, see if we need anything, and our presence for the kids, which I think is important. We also had the color run, so we had a beautiful afternoon. The color was added a few years ago to kind of up the ante for middle schoolers to make it just a little bit different and more exciting. There was a slime component, and there's also a powder component. The weather was great, the kids loved it. As usual, we had a lot of parents come out and volunteer and help do lap cards and all of that, and I think everybody went home drenched in some kind of color if they chose to, which I would say most middle schoolers chose to. I don't see a lot of colorless children from head to toe. It's in ears and noses and eyes, and like it's everywhere. So, but they, yeah, it's in their teeth, it's everything. But lots of them like to come up and give hugs to those of us who are not as drenched in color at the time, or maybe parents like to dump an entire jug on you at the end that's left. I don't know, things like that happen, but it's always a good time. The kids are always smiling all the time. So We also had our first band and choir concerts. And for those of you who might not have a kiddo in band or choir, they are pretty awesome to come out and watch. I was particularly impressed with the 5th grade band because, as you know, it's the first time they pick up an instrument. So having an October concert is one of those things where you're like, maybe, should we? Like, is that a good idea? But this band in particular has really put in the time and effort, and you can see even in this fall concert how they've grown dramatically from the beginning of the year. So it's really cool to just kind of watch the evolution of how they come from a 5th grade band student all the way to a 7th and 8th grade band student. And that part was neat too, because this year in our schedule is the first time, I would say, in a very, very long time that our 7th and 8th graders, our concert band actually has that time period together within their day. So they get to practice as a concert band every single day. And in the past, we'd have to pull 7th graders or 8th grade band students from another class to get them that rehearsal time before the concert. And now we don't have to do that. It's not interrupting any other academic courses, and they get that practice every single time. So both choir and band are really loving that time with them, and they're actually kind of getting to push like a harder repertoire of songs with the kids in a more advanced way because they do have that time together. So that's definitely been a bonus. So sticking with kind of the band thing, we had some students make the ILMEA for District 8. I'm just gonna recognize them really quick, but we are gonna invite them back to Pride of Prairie Hill in a couple of months. But in junior band, we had Isaac Atkins, Allison Dickerson, and Aaron Messner. In mixed choir, we had Maeve Anderson, Audrey Anderson, Drake Lomas, Lily Matthews, Aria Murley, and Layla Unrath. And in treble choir, we had Lily Armstrong, Ella Billadu, Ashley Laboda, Morgan Daniels, Ruth Toll, and Lucas Weir all make it into the ILMA. So that's always a cool experience for them. So we'll talk about that more. I think they're coming in December, if I'm remembering correctly. We also hosted on the 18th our Halloween party. So instead of doing, Halloween just seems to be kind of more of a fun, kind of hang out and be goofy with friends holiday. So we decided to join with the PSA and our student council, and we hosted a party instead of a dance. So there was elements where they could dance if they wanted to, but there was also concessions, and there was also an outside element. We had beautiful weather. Again, it's been awesome this year. We've had really great weather, keeping kids outside, which is amazing. It was very well attended. I feel like the behavior was awesome. We had more parents show up than actually signed up to help and participate and chaperone, so that was really good. Kids had a blast. They said they loved the outside component, which is not something we've done before. And PSA also did some more kits, so we had a little fire where students could buy some more kit and then go out and make us some more, and so that was definitely a big hit too. We finished up volleyball and soccer seasons. So our volleyball team, JV, they took first place in the tournament and then second overall in conference. Varsity finished 4th in the tournament and 3rd place overall in conference. And then JV soccer finished 3rd overall in conference, and varsity finished 4th overall in conference. So all of the teams have a ton of potential, even the younger ones. The JV team, they always tend to be a little greener, a little fresher, and have a lot to learn about the game. But it's cool to see that potential that's definitely coming up. And we've had a lot of really solid numbers at our tryouts this year, which has been something that historically Prairie Hill can kind of ebb and flow with and struggle with, is finding enough numbers and people to house these teams. I remember coaching once, and I had exactly 20 girls to make a volleyball team at both levels. So we've had numbers upwards of 40 and 60 for all of our tryouts that we've had so far in those areas, so that's been awesome to see. Boys basketball season has started. They have their first game Monday night, which means also cheer has started and dance season has started, so they're fun to come out and watch. I want to say next Monday we have a home game. Tina, are you going to correct me on that? Is it Monday?
No,
It's not Monday. It's
Thursday's
Thursday.
at Freeport.
Hold on.
Thursday.
I think it's Thursday.
Thursday's
Thank you.
Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
A lot of games, a lot of things, and a lot of changes have happened in
Yeah.
this basketball schedule, so I'm trying to keep afloat. But they're fun, a fun group to watch, and it's a good way to see a lot of different students. And then we also have our pep band come out and play at those events too sometimes, so that's fun to see. Definitely think it's worth noting something that I think we take for granted a little bit, but I've noticed just in talking to other parents of other districts, other friends of other districts, other administrators of other districts, is that Willowbrook offers a ton of clubs clubs to try to appeal to student interests. And what I think is amazing about it is that so many of our very own teachers and staff run those clubs because they're listening to what kids want and they're trying to give them an avenue to express that outlet. So just to kind of give you an idea what we have already, we have newspaper club going on, Cervotera going on, yearbook club going on, chess club, permaculture club, Spanish club, NaNoWriMo, which is specifically for November. It's National Novel Writing Month. We have intramurals going on, game club, pet patrol, and also cooking club. I don't think I'm missing anything, but those are all just of our extras, like our run club. Thank you, run club, Doug. How could I forget run club? So Doug does run club, for example. Siggy does yearbook club. Tara, as you know, is here for pet patrol. But there's all kinds of teachers in this group who spend that time and they want to just give kids things that they love to do. And a lot of people, I always talk to Doug about run club. They think that it's like sprinting miles and miles. And it's like we do a lot of walking and looking at nature and talking, and then we'll run a little, and then we'll do this. So it really is something for everybody, no matter what their likes are. If you look out back when it is daylight out, we actually added some things that are not animals this time to our outside place. So last year, the Art Sadler, Janine Binger kind of hosted or volunteered her time to organize Art Sadler for Prairie Hill. And with that, we become a host gym. So some of the games can come here and we make some money from that. And if they do concessions or other things, we can make some money. So last year, the boys came and they decided that they wanted to donate the profits of that to the school. So they donated $1,000, I believe it was. So we are finally getting brand new basketball hoops outside on the courts, which the kids are thrilled about, and they're counting down. They're like, "Can we use them today? Can we use them today?" I'm like, "No, the concrete's still wet. Concrete's still wet." So they're excited. So that's cool to see. And then we also have put in 2 pickleball courts, which has been a hit even at recess. Kids are picking up paddles and just all taking turns playing. And the cool thing about the pickleball courts is they're movable, so the posts are movable into the gym, so they can go into the volleyball net holes. So even in the winter, we can use it and have it inside as a sport there. So those have been some cool ads that we've been putting our custodial staff to work quite hard over but the weather's been great, so I figure like we just keep using it. Obviously, last night we had trunk or treat as well. That was hosted out here in the parking lot by the PSA. They had, it was a really great turnout. I was very impressed with how many people came, how many people came through, hosted trunks. Kids were happy. The Kellers once again did a wagon ride, so that was nice. They got to go around on the property and see everything, which was awesome. As Craig mentioned, we have conferences coming up on the 4th and the 14th. To my surprise, actually, Mrs. Goding emailed me and was like, "They're all full." And I was like, "What do you mean they're all full?" Which is like a big deal at the middle school level because we typically don't have conferences that full at this level. So I feel really good about the fact that people are coming in and wanting to meet with teachers and wanting to support kids. Kind of feels it's good to always have parents in the building for middle school. So we're scanning to make sure nobody overbooked themselves to see if we can get any appointments for anybody else. But I know that our teachers are always willing to meet with people other times or have phone conferences if they need to. So that was a positive for sure. Also, we do house 5th grade here. So because it is an elementary Golden Apple year, we do have some wonderful nominees in this building as well. Erica Goodsell, who is 5th grade science and math. Melissa Henschel, who is 5th grade literature and social studies. Daniel Vanek, who is English for 5th grade and literature for 5th grade. Sarah Betty, who teaches math for 5th grade. Marcy Ball, who does PE for 5th grade and all the other levels too. And then Kira Crippen, who does band for 5th grade as well. So lots of happening.
Great. All right. Mr. CZIZEK, district updates.
Just a few things out of outside of what will be discussed in committee meetings. I just wanted to give you a quick follow-up. We talked about the tuition waiver, and we have that till through next year for our full-time employees. And I mentioned a couple months ago, I think, that there was a new policy that's been put out that we can adopt that into policy instead of going through the actual waiver process with the Congress and public hearings and all the things. So I talked to legal the other day, and essentially what they said was we would have the ability, their take on it is we'd have the ability to modify it how we see fit. So That's the current take on it. I'll obviously monitor that. We don't have to worry about it again for another year. But if that's something that we want to adopt into policy instead of going through the waiver process, then we'll be able to do that as a district. Just wanted to talk quick about the literacy task force. That's going really well. We just had a meeting again last night. Was it last night or Monday night? And things are moving along great. Everybody's really excited about just some of the different techniques and strategies that we'll be able to use in the classroom. So it's kind of going from production to implementation is what we're looking at. So in a little bit, we'll be talking about some decodables where we need to reallocate some funds in the student activity fund to be able to purchase those for about $9,000. Resources that the younger grades especially will be able to use for different reading strategies and whatnot. So definitely got a big push going on there, and we'll kind of start branching that out into the buildings a little bit more as we continue our meetings. So a lot of fun stuff there. Just wanted to mention too, Willowbrook Middle School student chairs. We talked about this a bit in finance, and they might bring it up as well. So we have that on the docket for an action item to purchase new chairs here for Willowbrook, where we would be responsible for half, and the PSA has said that they take care of the other half. And then with the different easement things that we talked about, as far as the digital sign, we're just going to kind of put that on hold for now and figure out what that looks like and what that might entail. And Lori and I will probably chat about that here at some point in the next month or two. And then one last thing, just wanted to let you know, Wold, our architects, have finished up their health and life safety walkthroughs. So they're going to be meeting with us, or with me, within the next couple of weeks, so we'll get that set up, and then I'll obviously relay that to the board on the new list that we have for our new 10-year health and life safety survey. So that's all we have.
All right.
I have a quick question. I saw on the 5 o'clock news that the report cards came out today. for
They
the
did,
schools.
yes.
Have you had a chance to look at it yet? or-
Yep, we're
You'll
both
talk about
schools.
that next meeting?
Yeah, both schools are commendable. Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. I don't know if it's live on their website yet. I haven't taken a look at that. I've seen the educator preview, obviously, but yeah, both schools are commendable right now. We're gonna look and see how we can get those to exemplary. I'm sure there's just a couple things that we can tweak, so. One of the things I can mention though, outside of that, is when I went to the superintendent conference here a few weeks back, Tony Sanders, the new state superintendent, basically admitted that the state has had a moving target for all of the schools. So sometimes you're exemplary, sometimes you're commendable, and then there's three others that are beneath that you don't want to be at. But his thoughts, his idea, his action plan at this point is to figure out how to make that a more stable target so it's not always moving. So I think while it's great that we're commendable, I think moving towards the future, we're going to be able to see what the actual target and goal is, and then be able to achieve that year after year after year, because it's not continuously moving based upon assessments and whatnot. So good information.
Good. All right. Committee reports, building and finance. We met on October 21st, last week. We reviewed October billings. We reviewed the monthly deposits, activity accounts, treasury report. We also discussed the Prairie Hill water storage tank, and that pricing is in the folder under finance. Classroom furniture at Willowbrook, as Clint discussed, I think is $12,700 some odd dollars, with 50% of that being covered by PSA. Exact dollar amount, $12,752.57.
And that's the grand total, right? Not our half?
That's grand total.
Correct.
Yep.
And they took the tax off, I think.
Yep,
Yeah.
tax off, and then we'll take whatever good chairs that are here and pass them on to Mr. Carter.
Yeah, and the load capacity on those are like 800 pounds.
Yeah, they should last just as long as these.
Quality chairs.
880 pounds at $31.49 a chair.
For a chair.
If you'd like me to get a sample, I have one in my office and I'll sit
Do
in
you?
it. I actually asked for a sample before I purchased them, because I wanted to know if they were
Good idea.
good.
We also discussed the possibility of a pre-K playground, separate from the playground that's there currently. So we're gathering some information on pricing for that equipment, exactly what they would be looking for, where will it go, what will the substrate be underneath the playground equipment. So just starting that conversation, something that's appropriate and safer for our pre-Kers. We discussed Jack's Corner and the update there as far as what that's going to entail, meetings that have been had with the Jack's Corner team, and then also we discussed maintenance and upkeep of that moving forward.
Is there a plan or a committee or anything moving forward, or are you just meeting with them?
We'll have board and PSA input here in the next one.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we're reviewing what proposals and quotes we have so far for snow removal in the winter season, so. In years past, it's been errands,
Yep.
right?
Out of Clinton, Wisconsin.
Right, so we're getting some comparative quotes.
Yep.
And that Mason's was one.
Yep, and then we reached out to SNH, we haven't got anything back yet.
Yeah, and I know I talked to Brian Hansmeyer with Executive, and they had an interest as well.
Okay.
Did they?
They did.
They got a quote?
I don't have it yet, but I'll reach out to him after the meeting and find out what the status of that is.
Good, great.
From my experience, I would think executive and errands are gonna be
The least expensive.
the most
My-
line. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the right choice.
My only
but, like,
concern,
they're
and I-
comparable, very comparable.
Yeah, my only concern with Brian's team is I know they just got the entire contract for South Beloit's district, so I would wanna make sure that they have the horsepower to handle it. The
Absolutely.
equipment, the trucks, the salt trucks, and so forth. And we discussed priority. Obviously, we're education, so we can't have us fall on the back burner over retail and et cetera, so they need to make sure that they prioritize the school district. Jason, anything else, or Tina, anything else with finance?
That was it.
The rest was executive session.
Yeah, the storage tank update, we realized of the 4 quotes we got, they were all quoting, some were multiple units, some were single. So we're going back to them with, hey,
Cleaning that up.
this is what we want you to quote, and tell us why you think it needs to be something different, so. Thankfully, it's not a time-sensitive issue.
Yeah, in the past, we've had tank heaters, and we're looking at going to tankless for efficiency and just with our use, cost standpoint.
That was about it.
So, one question I have, the quotes that we have so far for the snow removal, is that per time? Like
So
every
it's-
time they move that thickness of snow, they charge whatever was listed?
Correct, and
there?
that should be in finance. It'll also show you there are different rates based on how much snowfall we get.
Yep. Yep.
And it's a tonnage cost, I believe, on the salt too.
And another thing that I just wanted to ask the Building and Finance Committee is, with the building projects, whether it's Jack's Corner and where that is at, or the workroom at Prairie Hill, has there been any general reflection on just the processes, what went well, what could be improved, that kind of stuff? Or how do we do not just that specific thing, but just as a board, how are we reflecting on things that are going on, and how do we improve, make changes for the future? So I'm just curious if any of that has kind of happened. One thing that comes to mind is, do we even have what a normal building project the steps would be to take, that we could have given anyone that wanted to do something, and this is just kind of, you go to the board, you go to your building principal first, anything like that. So, just curious.
Short version on that is, yes, there's been postmortem conversation on both JACQUI as well as the Prairie Hill School project and how that goes about. Obviously, Jack's Corner didn't involve much of the board, so that's something that in the future we want to make sure is changed. And then as it relates to Prairie Hill, how that approval process and communication process happens with budget and what scope's going to be, there's been discussion with that as well. As far as what the process is, it is delineated by the state on what the process is. If it is over, I believe what's the dollar threshold? 10?
10.
Yeah, there's a $10,000 threshold that's presented, it's voted on by the board. Anything 10,000 and less could fall to the administrators, I believe, to make an internal decision. Clint's been great about still involving the board with those decisions, but there is a formal process for any of those projects that go outside of that. As far as what that process is, it varies based on the complexity and size of the project. Obviously, if we're talking about replacing floor covering in the building, that's a simpler process that requires an overall floor plan with a flooring schedule that lists where there's carpet, where there's LVT, where there's ceramic, et cetera. As opposed to if we were to do let's say, an addition on Prairie Hill because we continue to grow, and if we decide that, you know, we get our demographic survey and we're gonna stay on location, and we're gonna engage Wold Architects or another architecture firm to start the design process. There's obviously a lot more steps involved with that, so on those projects, we'll develop a project committee, specific project committee that would be outside of just building and finance. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else?
No, I would just say from conversations I've had from other districts or, you know, at conferences, things of that nature, seminars we've gone to, that much bigger districts than ours will use somebody like Wald wholeheartedly, and they will pay extraordinary amounts to have that off the board, because the board, either whether that be because the district can afford it, or the board has no, just isn't the kind of board that kind of gets that much into it, or, you know, gets into the details as much as we do. I would say, I always will compare us over and over again to being a small business, and when you're a small business, you all just kind of get your hands dirty sometimes, where we're choosing to do it that way sometimes to save, you know, the expense of Wald. Versus Rockford, you know, is gonna go out, and that would be my opinion at least. So sometimes, while it's not always the smoothest process, or we have hiccups, I know that our reasoning behind not just unloading the whole project on someone is for the benefit of the taxpayers.
Just to put it in perspective, the last Prairie Hill School project, estimated scope range on that was somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 that we were able to put back into finishes in the process by not engaging, because their process was going to be, you know, planning and design phase drawings, contract administration, the permitting process, you know, their contract administration during the execution of the project and coming through and doing their punch list. We were able to handle a lot of that in-house and save the taxpayers in the district that money, which allows us more freedom to do other things for the students and staff in the district. So, but, that being said, it's all about balancing that, like Kimmy said, you know, we need to decide when we're allowed, when we can do that, and when we should do that, and take a step back. A lot of that's gonna depend on who we have as resources within the board and community too.
I have a quick question too that I actually thought of when Jackie was talking about the training, the drills for intruder drills. What's the status with those door locks with the grant? Do we have those?
We have them in hand.
Okay, so just waiting to be installed?
Yep, yeah, so it'll be Jimmy and probably Merle,
Sure.
maybe Briar, help him do that.
If you wanna get a good look at some that are installed, I would, you know, check out going over to
Hananiga.
Duke and go to Hananiga, they're
Right.
installed there.
I was just curious if it's the status of it here. And then my follow-up question with that is, again, thinking from like a substitute teacher's point of view, if they were there the day of the drill or the drill that you have coming up too, I know when I've subbed in both buildings, I don't have a classroom key at all, and that just makes my mind wander. Like, if something did happen, I would have no way to lock it at this point at the door because we don't have those locks yet. So maybe making sure each sub has a key or has something on hand, or when we do install those locks, if it's a sub that's unfamiliar with it, stopping down in the morning and showing them how to physically do the locks.
That's one nice thing about this hardware, you'll see when we get it.
Yes.
It could not be any simpler.
Right.
It is a giant red button on a brushed silver piece of hardware. I think we went brushed over, didn't we? Click.
Sure, but
That's
just,
it.
you know, for a substitute who
Yeah.
wouldn't know that that's what that's for,
Yeah.
just including that when subs come in or part of the sub training or whatever would be
Yep, absolutely.
beneficial.
We don't have the tethers here, do we? The wall tethers to the handles?
No,
Or the drop bolts?
no, those are good help in those.
Yep. And on that topic, I don't know if the rest of the board's aware, we did get a FOIA request for our, surprisingly, for our means and methods and our egress plan for our active shooter.
Interesting.
Clint and I both denied that. It's not a valid FOIA request. It puts our students and our faculty at risk. It's not something that we need or want in the public, so just making the board aware, we did deny that FOIA request.
The only other thing I think in finance, we started to talk about, we're kind of in the discovery phase, is the speed limit signs.
Yeah.
So that's a discussion I reached out to Whitman Post and that group over there, because they have some new ones they just got put in, this year, so we'll kind of see what their costs were, who they had do it.
Southway has them too.
New ones?
Over on Blackhawk. No, they've been around for probably 10 years now,
Oh, okay.
but.
They're the same as Whitman Post, but they don't have the speed limit. They just have the blinking signs at the top.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
other than that, they look the same to me. I happen to swing by both of them on the same day.
good recap.
I don't just drive that much for my children.
Some more to come.
All right, education and transportation.
Yes, we talked about a whole bunch of things. We talked about the fall festival and getting that set up to be the Pride of Prairie Hill for the students and the staff. Clint shared a training that he went to with the administrators for a crisis training with the I Love You Guys organization, I think it was. That again, is just trying to really get everybody thinking about response protocol for crisis situations, whatever the crisis might be, reunification plans, and then just tweaking our plans and protocols to making sure that everyone is aligned and knows responsibilities and, you know, procedures, protocols for crises. And then we also talked about the speed limit signs on Willowbrook Road, because Clint said that some parents had reached out to Craig regarding cars going very quickly on Willowbrook Road, and, you know, because we just spent all that time working on the safety of the parking lot, making sure that the cars are also following the speed limit, even though we do have a sign there that says when students are present, maybe upping it to the flashing sign or something like that. We had a really brief discussion about the easement and the Willowbrook sign, again, just thinking long-term and prioritizing the money that PSA is going to share with us and what that should be used for now, like the chairs over the sign at this point. And then Clint was also talking, because we are the transportation committee, meeting with the first student with the Hononegah Nations to talk about contract extensions and looking at different proposals, like if it's a multi-year extension, how many years are we going to look at? And then something else that was brought to me by a community member that I shared too, that Clint, I don't know if you had a chance to pass it on to, I don't remember the person's name, was having external cameras on all of the buses as a way to help monitor cars that ignore the flashing signs and the stop signs, to help with, again, obviously student safety being the first and foremost. But if something should happen, you would have that external footage of the bus to see, was the stop sign out? Did the car ignore it? What's the license plate on the car? You know, things like that to help with any process should any litigation occur. We discussed that it seems like it would be a win-win situation for everybody involved, because meeting with our negotiations with the first student, because it would be another safety measure for our students. And also for first student, it seems like it would benefit them because it would protect their driver. Then you would have footage of the car that ignored the stop sign and the flashing red lights and all of that. So Clint was gonna reach out to the point person.
Liddell.
What is it?
Liddell.
Liddell, that's
Yeah,
what it is.
and I haven't heard back yet.
Okay.
I feel like if I haven't heard back, he's managing both and Volunteer, so he's a very busy guy, but, we meet in a couple weeks for Nations, so.
Perfect.
I think he's planning on coming back, and if he hasn't gotten back to me by then, I'll address it then.
Perfect. So yeah, just again, and also it would just be a good, another good reminder if we are talking about the speed limit signs of cars going on Willowbrook too quickly, reminding about car responsibility for stopping. We have several bus routes where students have to cross, whether they're exiting or getting on, you know, they have to cross across the street, and if cars are ignoring that stop sign, obviously, we don't want anything tragic to happen, but if something should happen, having those external cameras would be beneficial. So just something to consider during negotiations with first student. We also talked about the pre-K, possibly kinder playground, and Kim brought up a great idea about how, you know, we could just start small, and this could be something that could be added on to, like every year by Jogathon. We even thought about parent donations too, thinking about what pre-Kers like to play on, like even just the little Fisher-Price little houses or little slides. Be reaching out to community and seeing if anyone has those to donate, like their own kids have grown out of them. Starting small with those types of things. And then also we thought it would be important to reach out to the pre-K teachers and involve them and ask them what do they see their students wanting to use. I don't know if Craig, that's something that you could pop in and pop down and ask them too. Just see if they have any thoughts on it before we go into thinking, you know, budget and looking out to all of these big playground companies, because I remember how expensive that main playground was at Prairie Hill, and where we want to start with that, and making sure it's something that the teachers would actually want to use with their students, because they know their students.
That's,
best.
going back to Mr. Keller's question, that's probably something that'd be good for us to develop a project committee on.
Yes.
Involving, someone from policy, if you want to be involved with that.
Yep.
From the building, obviously building and finance.
Mhm.
That way we've got everybody involved.
And pre-K teachers,
Yeah.
too.
And staff members.
Mm-hmm.
You know, PSA has a chunk of money they're sitting on.
You know,
That could be a great
it would be.
thing to talk to them.
Yes, and they did, obviously, they raised a tremendous amount of money for the main playground too, so reaching out to them for help, I think, would be a great step.
And then other thing, I know we've all kind of discussed a little bit about the Willowbrook sign out here.
Mhm.
We did discuss wanting to get an update and agreement in writing on our easement for that. Did
Yep.
we get that, or is that in process?
No, not yet.
Was like, you're asking me?
I'm looking at anyone, yeah.
Okay, I sent the easement to
We
you
have-
and Clint,
Okay.
just to look at it, because it is very, very generic. I
Right.
never wanted you to like,
Right.
give some thoughts as to what.
Okay.
And then if we want to reach out to the owners of that
I can do that.
piece of parcel, then
Yeah.
Lori would like to do that.
Okay.
I just don't know. what
I wanted
to-
you to look at that
I
easement.
need to know what
We
to
can
present
connect-
them with.
Yeah, we can connect offline on that, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we are dotting our i's and crossing our
Yes.
t's, because it is an easement, and I don't want to upset them as to how
Of
we
course.
use that easement. So
Yep.
make sure that we're highly communicative.
Definitely.
Anything else?
Yes, just briefly again, we talked about Art Sadler, about how we had a couple of people interested in that. And then something else that we highlighted it in that committee too was just kind of similar to Justin's question, talking about the communication and making sure that we are being responsive as a board, but also with administrators. So Kim mentioned too, I don't know, do you want to touch on that at all, Kim? The administrator communication?
You're fine.
Okay.
I was like, you take really good notes, or you type a lot faster than me, so I feel like you're.
I know that was something you brought up, so I didn't know if you
I
wanted
did,
to
it's
mention
okay.
anything about it. So again, just kind of highlighting the importance of administrators being quick to respond and not letting things fall through the cracks, whether it's emails from board members, parents, whatever it may be, staff members. And then we had a discussion about like what would be a good window to expect a response back, whether it's email or phone call or whatever it might be, to a staff member, a parent, board member, community member, whatever it might be. And then I brought, because again, something I'm guilty of is just always thinking from the teacher perspective and having the teacher hat on and knowing that teachers are evaluated on their parent communication and their responsiveness to communication. And I think that if we're holding our teachers responsible, and if parents were saying to the administrators, I've emailed my child's teacher multiple times, I haven't heard back yet, they would probably get marked down on their evaluation. So if we're marking teachers down for not having timely responses, we should hold that same accountability to administrators, is kind of the gist of the conversation. Just because we've been noticing too, things falling through the cracks and trying to tighten that up and what that looks like and what the reasonable expectation would be, 24 to 48 hours, ongoing conversation about what that might look like. And then same thing, Clint updated us on his meeting. He had just come from that meeting with Val about the Jack's Corner, so a brief update on that, nothing else that you guys didn't already say. And then something else that some parents have brought up to me, and I don't know, Craig, if you got this message too, was I think now that I have a fifth grader here at Willowbrook, so I have a lot of his friends, parents talking to me too, we're noticing some of the differences between Prairie Hill and Willowbrook. And one thing that has stood out is how wonderful Willowbrook teachers are about entering grades into teacheries and how they can see basically at any given time, you know, the report card's not gonna be a surprise. They can log in anytime and see how their child is doing on the standards. And it kind of makes some of these parents wonder, why can't we do that at Prairie Hill? And some teachers at Prairie Hill have different systems, whether it might be a binder where every time there's an assessment at home, parents see it, but some teachers don't, and the report card is a total surprise and they don't know what there is. So I guess a question that was passed on to me that I passed on to the education committee was, why are grades expected to be entered at Willowbrook but not Prairie Hill? Something to consider, something to talk about with your staff, whatever it might be.
I started that, I had,
Mhm.
Clint did reach out.
Yeah,
Good.
I started that conversation. The second, third, and fourth grade teachers, really third and fourth, they do have their data binders that should be coming home weekly.
Yep.
second grade, they're working on it. I had a discussion with kindergarten and first grade. We use teacher ease to report, because they'll do beginning, middle, and end assessments. So if you're gonna see the first grade, it's gonna be the pre-test grade, but they haven't taught yet. So that could be like if they're, most of them might be at a 1.
Right.
Because they haven't taught it yet. So it's really, they use it once they go through the process and they go do more than just assessments. It's more, especially for kinders in first grade, it's more anecdotal, small group notes, anecdotal notes. So
Yep.
I'm hopeful, at least based on what I've seen, is that teachers are reaching out individually to parents if there's concerns. If that's not happening, I do need to know that. But it is something we will continue to talk about.
Yeah, I guess from just my perspective too, the same thing could happen at Willowbrook, where it's the first time they're introducing a standard on, I don't know, decimals or whatever it might be. So it could be the pre-test, but parents still see that then too, so just something
Yeah,
to
no.
consider.
I think just to add a little history, when we all went standard, just because I was here when that happened, historically Prairie Hill never used teacher aides. So that has been something that the expectation has always been for Willowbrook to use teacher aides, and I think we always have. But that's something that, since Craig has come on board, that we've talked about and trying to kind of unify some of those systems. For example, like pick a time, adding that to conferences was a new one.
Right.
Where we're trying to kind of align more, just because that was what had happened and just kind of continued to happen. So even like stuff like behavior and discipline, let's say, wasn't logged in teacher ease, and especially like, we have really great kids for the most part, but it's also nice as an administrator to get a glimpse of things that have happened maybe historically with a kid behavior-wise. And so that's something Craig's doing as well, like he's using teacher ease to log, behaviors that happen, so then it gives kind of a insight to me, and that's only, it's private information for administrators only to see, that's not
Right.
available for teachers to see from that aspect, but, so we're working on that as a team to try to make that something more.
It is a great discussion though.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, that's why I thought it
No,
was a
I
great point.
appreciate that. Yep.
to bring
And
up.
as a parent, I do see, like, I see my kids' binders come home, but I think that starts in third grade, so I feel like there's that years before.
Just one quick thing. It sounds like both committees outside of policy, which is what I'm on, did have a general update on Jack's Corner. I just want to double check that there's clear action items. Folks know what the next thing is, because I don't want to end up back at where we were last month. So I'm just double checking on that.
My understanding is the last thing was the ball's in their court to get us some additional information, correct?
We're gonna have another follow-up meeting with a board representative and a TSA board representative, and then we'll go from there.
So now, I think the next step is like, there's a project team from all stakeholders that have wanted to contribute, and then, my impression is that's what's kind of been the holdup, is that there are multiple organizations involved, so it's kind of like, who's gonna take the lead, and no one wanted to step on toes, or wasn't clear. So I think now there's a clear plan of the project team, and then it'll be able to go from there.
Thanks.
There's obviously an agenda for everybody involved. It's a very sensitive thing, so I think it's been unique. It's time now that we understand what the objective is to get the project committee, the appropriate committees, PSA, staff, the Jack's Corner team. We've got to go from there.
Awesome.
Policy. Mr. Keller, you want to take that? You have anything?
Yeah, for sure. So our normal policy items, we did check for a little bit and got through the section 7, specifically the items related to our kind of bullying policies, just to see if our kind of own implementation of our board policy was kind of following some of the guidance and worksheets and administrative procedures that press puts together for superintendents or principals to use. And since we did have that document, we just wanted to make sure that it lined up with that. So there was one area where we were going to add some of that, which we discussed briefly at last board meeting, where the state is now having us report some different information on kind of bullying statistics, if you will. And we'll just add that to the report that we already have in place, so we're in a good spot for giving that to the state. Otherwise, we did discuss recording meetings. In the policy folder, there is a separate Google Doc that I put together with some general research on some different options for microphone types that we might use, whether it's one in the middle like we have today, the owl where both the audio and visual is in the same unit, different mics that trail along the whole table here, whether we have individual ones or there's one every 2 or 3 people. So in general though, it's kind of looking like if we were going to get equipment for that, one, it might be nice to have a self-contained unit that we don't have to have a lot of cords to deal with, equipment. So that's where the appeal comes in with maybe the owl. But just really trying to figure out if the audio is gonna come across well when there's fairly considerable distance here. But it is kind of looking like it might run, 1,200 or less. So I don't know if this needs to come to the finance committee at some point to discuss how that looks.
Are we gonna get a demo on the owl?
That's what I want to
Because
find out.
we use that at my work we have the full board meeting in one room, and then we have committee meetings in another room. The owl works great for the small committee,
Mhm.
small, like it's
You're
like
closer
this
to-
table, basically. It is terrible for this.
Okay.
So the audio's fine, and that thing, it moves, which is really distracting, because you're in the middle of talking and all of a sudden it's like, woo, and it looks at you. So it's kind of weird. But the audio, when you play it back, is really hard to, I would have a hard time hearing it. So I would like, and this was 4 or 5 years ago when I dealt with it last, maybe they've changed it
A
since.
newer version.
But it would be nice to have maybe a demo they could give us to try for a meeting.
For sure, that's
If we could.
kind of, in my mind, I kind of want to proceed at this point. It kind of seems like we need to have a general consensus as a board. Do we want to move forward with this? Do we want to prioritize just recording and posting? Do we want to prioritize live stream too? Because honestly, the software involved, you could do either one. If we use Google Meet or Zoom or whatever, you can record it, you can just use it to record, or you can live stream, obviously, too. You can just, so that's kind of where we left at that meeting, is kind of bringing it to the board, just what we came up with, whether it's general prices or general options, before we kind of dive in deeper and figure out what equipment we're actually going to get, because I scrolled past tons of different microphones, so the ones that are in there is by no means the only ones, so.
I've asked Clint to engage our IT support here for the district too, to get their, I'm certainly not, I don't have anything of quality to offer when it comes to the technology piece of it, and I'm not saying you don't, but perhaps that's something we can engage them on too, and
Sure.
try to get some guidance on what the right equipment and software is for us to use based on our needs.
Is the owl, I just don't remember, is that a live stream option or a recording
So
option?
there is the hardware, the stuff that you buy, that you plug in to a computer, that's going to be your camera and your microphone, whether they're in one unit or they're separate. But you need to have some kind of software running on your computer to actually do the recording. So
Authorize it when
the
to start and
bigger
stop.
dollar item, honestly, is the equipment to actually input the audio and the visual. The software, we just kind of have to figure out, can we do this with Google Meet, which we more than likely have the ability to do anyway, without hitting that, you have a free account, you're done in 60 minutes, kind of thing.
We'd be
So,
done already.
Yes.
I can check with our IT guys that work too and see what because they dumped the owl, so they're using something different now.
Oh, okay.
I can see maybe because it's a very similar size, it's almost the same size setup except we have a table here. But I can check with our guys that work too.
Yeah, that's honestly, when I'm scrolling through pages of things, I'm like, but is it going to actually work? Are we just gonna spend the money
And a lot of
it's
times
not
too,
gonna
because
do
we're an
what we want?
educational institution, we'll get a very different, a deep discount than what you might see on
Okay.
Amazon, so.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like 30%, I think, between 30 and 40%. So let me talk to Ryan and see.
No, I just, without like
Just put you in
reading,
touch with them. I
without
don't-
reading this 2 pages in front of
Mm-hmm.
everybody, is there, I see that you might have reached out to legal about some
Oh,
things,
yes.
and can you
Yes.
give me like the cliff notes of that?
So, you were going to reach out, did you hear anything back, Clint, from legal themselves? So I reached out to our field rep, or whatever the title is.
Laura, that
Yeah,
one.
Laura. And IASB essentially says that they don't know of anything that restricts or says that we should be super concerned about protecting, PII, student names, that kind of thing, identifying individuals, because people can come and record.
Yeah, great, yeah.
But the questions we asked Clint to convey to legal is, do they see any issues as a whole with the concept? And then do we get any kind of different thoughts on that if we are posting, like, this may be recorded? If that's not okay with you, just, I don't know, that kind of thing. A disclaimer, if you will. So, we just, despite having that kind of nod of approval from IASB, just thinking through it, just didn't seem right that just because the public can record it, that gives us the ability to not protect PII when we have to do it everywhere else. So
Right, yeah, exactly.
that's why we wanted to reach out to legal for sure. Let's see. Any other questions on the recordings at this point?
Nope, I think, at least from my standpoint, I think just engaging some input, both from Tina's team and then from their district IT. And obviously assembling cost and presenting that to building and finance so we can review it, and then we can always add it to the agenda for voting and approval at the board meeting.
Okay. If you find anything out, then.
I don't wanna get involved, because I don't like IT stuff, so I'm gonna have Ryan, I will
Okay.
have you two meet, and then we can get.
Why don't we set a target, why don't we set a target to try to have something assembled and have pricing for voting in December? Does that work for everybody? Give us
Okay.
November here
Okay.
to.
Well, does this have to come to the full board for approval, since
depends on
it's under
pricing.
10
I don't
grand?
know what we're at for pricing. No, it wouldn't, but, I mean, we should, since it's been part of our agenda, we should probably at least know what it is, and it's gonna be part of our meeting.
And just more of an FYI, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm just curious on legal. I don't think I understand that there's not a legal issue, likely, but I also don't wanna find out in 6 months
I don't wanna
that
say.
that we're doing something wrong, because
Yep.
we all know that finding out these details about exactly how we're supposed to do everything in these instances, we find it out more after the fact than before. So I'm just asking and I don't know how to find out the information, because again, it's hard to, and people give us very vague answers. But again, it's not because I don't wanna do it, it's just that I don't wanna find out in 6 to 9 months that we missed something, because
But
we,
You said you're meeting with the nations in a couple weeks? Could you ask if any of the other school board meetings have that, or maybe even 205, which probably does?
North Boone does. I did reach out to one of their board members, but I plan to connect with them a little bit at the
Okay,
conference too.
I was gonna say, instead of reinventing the wheel, if we do that, 205, I know records them, I don't,
They
have
do.
no idea what they use.
I think they're all stationary within their
Okay.
meeting space, but it's a designated meeting space.
Yeah, that's kind of a challenge we have here, for sure. It's all gotta get picked up at some point.
Good.
The only other thing, I did see it was on the agenda later on, we did discuss self-evaluation of the board as well, but I don't know if we wanna hit that later, if there was anything else in between now and then.
We'll get to that. I
That's
do
under
have,
miscellaneous, yeah.
yep. So I do have 2 motions to present here tonight. That's building finance, we can go before we go into, our miscellaneous and our FOIA requests. So the first one is, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the purchase of 400 student chairs for Willowbrook Middle School for the total of $12,752.57, with half of that cost being covered by the PSA.
So moved.
Second?
Mrs. Allenbacher?
yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Yes.
I'd also like to entertain a motion to approve the reallocation of excess funds in a student activity account to purchase decodable sets.
Is this, I haven't seen this until now essentially, so, and I haven't heard anything. What, decodable sets? I saw it in there, but
Like phonics books for the new literacy task force
okay.
for students to read.
Do you want to touch on the work statement?
This
Yes.
was discussed in education, right?
Yes, since the literacy task force is moving to more science and reading, we don't have, like, when students go to like teacher table and things like that, we are really short on decodable phonics books instructions, so teachers and students really do need these to advance our phonics instruction. They're very excited about them. Here, thanks.
And just to be clear, this is not a $10,000 threshold vote. This is a vote to reallocate funds that are already within our budget from student activity to here.
How much was it?
It's about 9,000.
And I think anytime too that we have a new initiative that we're putting on our teachers, we have to supply them with the tools to make that initiative successful.
Does it matter which student activity fund is it coming from? It says eight.
It's
I'm assuming
PHS.
one.
PHS.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Allenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Is that the last one to go? Can I go back to policy real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of.
That's the last vote.
Okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot, because Steph's not here, but you guys, I feel like, as well as you guys have dug into policy in the last couple of years, we're just keep putting more on you guys, so I apologize. But in terms of the errors or the inconsistencies with like the committee, minutes being posted, I mean, I'm sure a quick Google can get us the right answer to how we're supposed to be doing that, but can you guys somehow connect in policy just to maybe revisit that side of things?
Yeah, so it was actually.
Because I've been confused for more time than I should admit, even though I can Google it and find it out, but about whether they are posted after we approve them or just as soon as we have time.
So
I guess.
it's got wording within 30 days or the next regular meeting, whichever happens later.
Okay.
And then I saw it in the law itself that it said 10 days after that, but then I was reading another IASB thing, looking for something else, and it said 7 days there. So I would assume that we would just go with the lower amount, but.
So you're even finding like
Inconsistencies.
inconsistencies with the answers?
Yeah, maybe the law I looked up had an amendment later on
Yeah.
that moved it back to 7,
Okay.
so there
Which
might
is-
be that
yeah.
aspect.
Which I
but-
totally get, which is kind of why I was like, is there a way you guys can
So,
dive into it a little bit?
let's see, so I had gone through section 2 of our policy, which we didn't get to this last time, we had briefly mentioned it, but I was looking at it, using some tools to extract like tasks for different groups of people, like board president, school board, superintendent.
Is that that
So,
AI crazy
Yeah,
document
I
you have
had
in
that
there?
in there,
Okay, I
if you
read
saw
it.
that. I'm trying to snag some of that stuff so we can compile it into a useful thing for, this is your role. Take a look at this, here's all the policies that you should probably look at. But there was tucked in a footnote on the policy that said this applies to committee meetings as well. Like, so I was going to bring it up at that point. Then, I reached out about something else to Josh and Clint today in an email, and just trying to figure out like how do we prioritize some of the stuff that we do all the time, but it's not, doesn't really have a place in the building and finance specifically, or the policy maybe, because we're doing the actual policy manual. So just trying to figure out, I think you mentioned, you had a fancy name for the role, but essentially a person who maybe even sits on the policy committee that specifically deals with what's sit down.
Basically a compliance officer
Yeah,
for the board.
read the OMA stuff that ISB puts out and all that stuff to keep us up to date.
Alright, if you guys do, I mean, depending on where this all goes, the other thing that I wanted to point out to policy, and Steph would remember if she was here, or I questioned Clint a little bit, because whatever it was, 3 years ago or something, we brought Laura Martinez in here for like a session that was basically, and all of it, you know, a ton of our documents went to legal, we had that session with her. In my mind, although I don't have any documentation, like, you know, I don't remember the agenda from her being here or anything, like, I don't have the documentation she gave us anymore. But in my mind, it was like kind of an audit of our board, and she pointed out things we were doing right, things we were doing wrong, whatever, so I was so confused to find out how we were doing something incorrectly when I felt like we just brought her in 3 years ago to make sure we weren't doing anything incorrectly, because we have found since I've been on the board at least, that there's been, every year it's kind of like, we fix something, we clean it up, we fix something in terms of those necessities, you know, and those OMA procedures, and not just OMA related, lots of other things as well, that were kind of always fly by the night before. So if you and Steph talk in policy, I would just ask her if she remembers anything about that meeting with Laura and that session that Laura hosted with us. Maybe she just didn't dive that deep into what she looked at for us, you know? But I questioned how that didn't get flagged 3 years ago when we paid somebody to come here and help us.
Like, could that footnote have been an amendment in the past since 3 years?
I don't,
You know what I mean?
personally, but.
I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know, because you weren't here during, I know you didn't, like, you weren't at that session, so I just wanted to remind you and Steph that we tried to find some of these holes 3 years ago.
Okay. That's good.
Board requests, none. Board self-evaluation.
So I'll just give a quick update on that. I reached out to Martinez, and basically what she said, the conversation that happened during policy was if the board could self-evaluate in closed session, or if they had to have a rep, which Justin had brought up. And so the board does have the ability to do a self-evaluation in open session if they feel like they want to do that. If you do want to do it in closed, then you would have to have some sort of state delegate. It doesn't have to be IASB, she said. Typically IASB handles it, so if you wanted to do that again in closed session, you'd have to have like Laura Martinez or somebody come do that.
And I'll just say, because I'm the one who brought this conversation up a few months ago, it wasn't necessarily for any reason other than our board calendar that we made like about 3 years ago, which is supposed to kind of remind us that, you know, what month we do the budget, what month we do this. It's just supposed to be our document that we can kind of look back and make sure we didn't miss some of those repetitive things that we deal with. It was listed on there. So I actually thought it was in policy that we had to do it, which is why I brought it up, because it was listed in the policy section of the board calendar. So it may be one of those things that if it's not in the policy and we don't have to do it, we don't want to do it. I only brought it up because I saw it on a document that I thought we were going to use, you know what I mean, that we were using as our reference.
Okay,
I have two quick questions too, just that reminded me of that board calendar. Have we made our goals yet for you, Clint? I feel like we were gonna wait for the IAR result presentations, because then maybe some goals were gonna stem from those scores.
Yeah.
So,
That was a part of the discussion.
right, okay, so are we, I don't know when the IAR presentation usually happens, but is that coming up? So
Yeah,
we
we
can
can
get
do
those
that.
goals again?
November.
November, okay. And then also just circling back to something Craig said in his principal report too about the book fairs coming up, just to remind the admin to alter this, like the stock form letter that the book fair sends to include items that we talked about in the past, that making sure that it's a fundraiser and grade level of books that will be there and the format of that, just to make sure the communication is clear and upfront. Yes, good, okay.
all right. That being said, I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session where we will discuss employment compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, and negotiations.
So moved.
We got one more at the bottom.
And lawfully closed meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Mrs. Allenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody coming back. Motion to approve personnel report, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make,
I'll
make a motion to approve the personnel report.
Second.
Stop trying,
I
Alex.
can't help it. COVID cough, I won't go away.
Do this since I gotta vote.
Yeah, it
From 6
included,
weeks ago.
Paraprofessional, hiring of a paraprofessional librarian at Prairie Hill, and 2 resignations from Willowbrook. Let's see, roll call. Over here. Mrs. Allenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Crouch.
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon.
Yes.
Mr. Keller.
Yes.
Okay.
Under the Open Meetings Act, it is necessary to review the minutes of past Board of Education closed meetings to determine the need for continued confidentiality of minutes. Superintendent's designee has reviewed the closed session minutes and has determined that portions of certain closed session minutes from January 2023 to April 2024 are allowable for public inspection. And you can go ahead and take a look at each of those on their own here.
I did make 2 changes to people's name corrections, but.
Spelling? Like spelling?
Yeah, like and ours had an E on the end. Small stuff.
It is recommended that the Board of Education determine that the portions of the closed session minutes expressly set forth above can be released for public inspection, and that all other closed session minutes or portions thereof from January 2023 through April 2024 require confidential treatment and not be released for public inspection. I'll entertain a motion to approve the review of closed meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the review of closed meeting minutes from January 2023 to April 2024.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Crouch.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yes.
Mr. Keller.
Yeah.
Mrs. Allenbacher.
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon.
Yes.
Alright, the next thing is you, Mrs. Allenbacher.
Is this me?
That's you.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff Courtney's here to hear me give this spiel for him. But if you guys remember, June or July meeting, Courtney came, on behalf of City of South Beloit to propose the idea of a tax rebate, property tax rebate to new homes that would be built on currently platted lots. So this would be anybody who, it's mostly the neighborhoods that you guys all now live in or know of that have unfinished lots in them. And essentially, as the City of South Beloit's idea, and, you know, teaming up with the school district, would be to entice permits to be pulled on those lots, new houses to be built, and those neighborhoods to be finished. As neighborhoods become finished, that usually also, in theory, brings in the, you know, the likelihood of more more developers looking at starting something new. But to start something new when you have 3 neighborhoods with unfinished lots, could be a deterrent for some of those new developers. So, he has given us a legal document to submit to legal. Whatever we vote on today would be subject to legal approving it. What it basically states is, any single family or 2-unit owner occupied home. So this would include maybe a condo or a duplex, but somebody who the owner would actually have to live on one side. So this is not gonna apply to anybody that decided to build 6 duplexes and use them all as renters. This is only gonna be for anything owner occupied. The city will handle all administering. That means any applications, whatever they're gonna do on their end, for people to fill out the paperwork would all be handled by City of South Beloit. This would include any permits pulled starting July 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2027. And then people would have to finish building their homes by year 2028. The language states that we'd be willing to give these new homeowners 2 years of rebate on their property tax bill. So you have to remember, if you look at the line items of your property tax bill, it tells you how much goes to the police department, how much goes to the city, how much goes to the school, libraries, etc. So this would only, these people would get rebates for our portion of the property tax and City of South Beloit's portion. You know, there's, I mean, I don't know what, I'm not gonna go into the risk or what, you guys can decide what your opinion is. We decided to add 2 years to the language. I mean, like Courtney has told me and Clint, this could change, you could do 3 years, but really they feel like, City of South Beloit feels like 2 years would be enough of an enticement for people. Basically, how many like houses this could affect if we did have an influx and everyone decided to pull permit in the next 12 months. 15 lots from the Commons of Prairie Hill off of Willowbrook. 13 lots on Yellowstone Drive, which is the back of the neighborhood closest to Prairie Hill off of Willowbrook. And then 8 single-family lots in Manchester Trails and 12 condo lots. Again, if somebody were to pull permit on those, they would have to live in portion of that condo complex. And then 25 lots of the villas of Oakfield. Are those single-family lots? Or does it matter? Not specific?
They're condo lots currently.
Okay.
Those are for senior citizens only.
Not technically.
It just turned into that.
It has turned into that, so the I mean, like, you'd be likely to not see school-age kids coming out of that development, but it's possible.
Oh, sure.
It's,
Cause I live right by it, and when I walk my dog there, they're like, "Do you live here?" I'm like, "No." Like,
it's
my
not,
kids?
it's not an age-restricted community, it's not in the schools.
Probably my
That's what
hands.
they told us, that it was for like 65 and up or 16
No,
up or something.
It's not an age-restricted community.
They lie.
Maybe, yeah. Some of them.
I'm gonna walk my kids there all the time.
Gray hair doesn't equal honest.
For numbers, I don't know if this will add too much complexity or whatnot, but, like looking at a 2023 tax rate, Prairie Hill School District is 3.6585%, which is roughly 41.7% of everyone's tax bill. City of South Beloit's rate is another 11%. It's 4.6384% total rebate, which would be roughly 52.9% of somebody's tax bill. So if I pull a permit, I build a house, I'm gonna get roughly half off my property taxes for 2 years, as an enticement by the school district and the city.
Wow.
Does it make sense, and does anyone have any questions? Or opinions?
What if you're an existing homeowner in the district and I go and buy a new, does it have to be outsiders?
You have to live in it, so you have to move,
Owner occupied.
owner occupied, so you have to sell your current house and move into the new one.
You can't just build a second home.
No.
I'm not, I guess, is this a need that we're seeing in order to draw people to the district?
I think the city of South Beloit sees it as a need or want to fill the lots to potentially entice, the development of a new neighborhood.
Elsewhere, outside of this scope.
Correct,
Yeah.
you know, the theory being that is anyone, if somebody starts running demographics on our school district and they see that we have 3 neighborhoods with dozen lots left in them, are they really gonna start a new 300 lot neighborhood? Or do we fill these so that they might think about it? You probably know better than that end of things, Josh.
If we look at this through the same eyes that we look at the TIF, options we offer corporations that come in to the district, this is vacant land, getting pennies on the dollar for that land in tax revenue. If somebody built, it's 2 years of a rebate to them, and then the eternity of tax money coming in on that property. Yes, does that potentially put more students in the district? And is there a cost associated with that? Yes, but, as it sits now, there's nothing there. We're not getting any, very little tax money on that property.
So what's the downside besides what you just mentioned about it might cause new students and we might have to get more teachers and expand? Is there another negative to this?
there's 2 years of people living there
It's
and
lots of
getting no
tax
taxes.
Somebody could
Well,
build a house,
that's
have 3
obvious,
kids,
yeah, but is
and
there some other reason that I'm missing? I'm not into real estate stuff. It's just the loss of revenue for 2 years, or half, and then potentially an influx of new students.
Well,
That's it?
the 100% for us is half for the owner.
Yeah.
But, no, otherwise we just look at vacant lots.
I mean, just to put it in perspective, you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 lots. You know, for every 10 lots, that's $90,000 in tax revenue if we use a $300,000 median range, you know, with the way the bracket is, so.
But it's not taking it away money from us, it's not
It's
taking away.
delayed.
It's delaying it, yeah, for 2
Right,
years.
I mean, it's not like we're making money and they're gonna take it away, we're not making anything.
Right.
Right now.
no, but those houses might have families move in that have kids that we provide education for 2
Yeah.
years without the,
Yeah.
but we know we're getting it for years to come. And probably after those kids graduate, you know, and there's always the option that people will build houses that don't have kids either.
Yeah.
And that would be no
Where it
strain on
becomes a
the.
loss is if you've got the same example, the same 10 lots. We don't agree to this, and they buy those 10 lots and they pay their $8,000 or $9,000 in taxes per year. You know, $80,000 to $90,000 of income that the district would get that we're not getting, whether they've got students in the district or not. I agree though, I mean, it's about the long game here, I mean, it definitely makes it attractive to bring in. I guess my opinion would be is definitely to go with the 2-year as opposed to a 5-year.
It was 2 or 3, but I definitely agree with 2 no
2 or
matter
3,
what.
yeah. Yeah, I would say the 2 years probably. The other thing to think about here is the build time. You know, their tax, you know, that piece is gonna start when they secure the property, and then they're gonna be in arrears on their taxes, so in a year of that's gonna get eaten up anyway. And that's gonna be a lower dollar value anyway till they're reassessed. I would assume, right, Courtney?
It's set up so it doesn't start until they hit the full assessment.
Oh, okay.
So if you build the house in 25, you get fully assessed January of 26.
Right.
It technically is the tax bill that you pay in June of
So
27.
we won't see revenue until 28.
It's gonna be a while.
Yeah.
And all of the other, entities listed on the tax bill who get the benefit of the taxes, they've agreed to this already?
It's just us and City of South Beloit.
Just us. So you mentioned like the libraries and all that other stuff.
So yeah, I was just explaining like a line item. A lot of people don't
Okay.
actually look at the breakdown of what they pay. So they're still, what they're not, so the 49% I mentioned that they're still gonna be paying is going to all those other entities. Gotcha.
We would still get the revenue per pupil from the state, correct?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, this is just county tax.
this is just
Yeah.
this portion of the tax bill.
That's true.
What would we get?
Any other questions on that piece of it? That is a portion, for tonight.
Yeah, we were asking, for approval and then subject to legal approval from that. Approval from the board and then subject to legal approval.
We'll have to, the time frame that we, you're proposing the 2-year, I assume, that's what's being.
Yeah, the legal document that Courtney gave Clint, says 2-year,
Okay.
so that part's already done.
Well, I guess then I'll start this off then. I'll entertain a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement on new property tax rebate subject to legal approval for a 2-year period.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Crouch,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Allenbacher.
Yes.
Can I ask just a uneducated, I have nothing to do with real estate property stuff, it's not my thing. Is this something that is big enough that you think would hit the media? Or just like, happens all the time?
It'll definitely hit social media because your real estate developers, your builders, your real estate agents, it's a great asset for them to be able to bring potential clients to our district.
I guess I just wonder about any backlash from, I'm not saying to teachers, but, like a negative view of this. Oh, the school district agreed to do this 2 years and now we have potentially 60 houses with all these kids coming to the school district, we're not getting the money, we're gonna have to expand, we're gonna have to hire more teachers. And the media can spin anything
Yeah,
any
sure,
way they want,
anything
but
is
is this
possible.
like a normal thing that happens a lot?
Yes.
It just kinda goes under the radar?
I would say the city makes some, entices and does things with taxes so that people, that's what their goal is, to get development to the area.
Yeah.
Commercial development obviously is what I think the city would say they focus on, but, as I see it, as things might keep developing commercially in those avenues in our area, the housing is gonna be needed too, so I'm looking at the long game of this.
It's less common than the TIF that we've talked about with some of the, Quick Start coming and so
Yeah.
forth. I mean, that's pretty typical
Okay.
to offer because of the tax revenue that's on the back end of that to entice them to choose our location as opposed to going to the next community over.
Now, I think I haven't read it to be for sure, but as I understand it, Rockford 205 actually did this a year or two, whenever they did it, but they wanted the enticement so much so that they included investor properties, multifamily properties, anything, basically. So this was just a little more restrictive to owner occupied.
Okay, all right, if everything's good, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?